Okay, there we are. There we are. Welcome, listeners. Welcome to what the. Okay, no, I think we're okay. Welcome, listeners. Welcome to Kyle and Cody's Call Cinema Cast. I'm Kyle.
I'm Cody.
Yeah, this week. Yeah. Sorry, I know we said we would be have an episode at the end of June. Didn't end up happening. Probably my fault. I've been fiddling with my audio settings, and I've been destroying recordings left and right for the last a while. Hopefully, this one's okay. Should be. Anyway,
My hard work.
yeah, yeah. So it's
Yeah, so
anyway.
far
Yeah,
our track record hasn't been
yeah.
great. This whole entire month it's just been the super hit or miss for any form of project we've attempted to do. So
And like I have a lot of night shifts at my new job. Yeah.
we're supposed to be the good generation for this, and apparently we've been failing.
No, I occasionally like help my dad with something, and I get annoyed with him, and he asks me to help stuff with him because he thinks I know what to do to fix his problem, but really I'm just learning how his like I don't know, cell phone payment software works every month and a half or whatever. So it's not like a
Oh, it's been
easy thing. Yeah.
honestly, Reddit has been my best friend for a while now. Like I switched over from wired headphones over to wireless headphones, and for whatever reason, it wasn't working in my video game Overwatch 2 that I like to play. Um, and it would record like it would sound good on everything. Um, practice range was fine. As soon as I got into game, audio quality just completely dropped, and I had to Google it, and Reddit was like, "Yeah, it's Blizzard's fault." So
Hmm.
here's a workaround how to fix it. So honestly, if you're having like any technical issues, Reddit is the place to go. So
I probably should make a proper account at some point. I just haven't. I think I might have for a thing, but I forgot. Yeah.
oh, that's
Yeah.
completely fair. But I don't even think you really need a proper account for Reddit. You just can just read form.
Yeah. Mhm.
Take a second here because my dog's chewing on the table.
So yeah, this week we're doing the 1998 film Soldier, starring Kurt Russell and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, written by David Webb Peoples. Not to be confused with apparently a 1998 Indian film of the same name. Like I would assume the film, like up just click. I assume the film is like I assume the film has like a name in Indian. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, the reason we did this film is because I had gotten a whiff on the winds that the writer of this film, um, just correct myself. Yeah, it was written. Yeah, the writer of this film, David Peoples, he co-wrote the screenplay for Blade Runner, based on the novel Philip K. Dick novel. Do androids dream of electric sheep? And he wrote the screenplay for that. Blade Runner, obviously, very popular film, almost worthy of a episode of its own, really. But I think nowadays it's probably too popular for a cult cinema podcast. Then again, I don't know. I feel like that movie's been fairly recognized by the by the proper film community at this point. But anyway, the writer figures this is a spiritual successor to Blade Runner. The movie, I guess, not technically the book.
I was gonna say like I considered throwing up Scanners Darkly for the podcast, which is another uh movie based on Philip K. Dick's work. About an undercover agent in a drug operation where they use like uh full body suits to hide the identity of the agents and stuff like that. It was actually a really good film, and it has, like, Keanu Reeves, Keira Knightley, and, like, Robert Downey Jr. in, like, 2003. But then again, I was like, "This is way too popular for this." Like, we can't just, like, do stuff on whims at this point because, we have to be obscure and
Yeah, I've never actually seen most of that film. I've seen like they played it all the time on like Teletoon when I was a teenager, and I have only ever watched like 5 minutes of it at a time. Every like 2 years or a year, whatever, and I've just never watched the whole movie. But I think I don't know, is that movie really popular actually? Did it like do well? I don't know.
I think one of the biggest, like well, no, honestly, it hasn't.
Yeah.
It was, budgeted at 8.7 million and it made $7.7 million at the box
Mm,
office, so it lost $1 million somewhere, and, like, the reception of it, generally positive reviews. I really like the animation style on it, like, it was very different than stuff coming out in, 2006, so,
yeah.
uh
I I might like it. I
also
just
don't know
did,
how,
yeah.
like,
Go ahead.
the book was reviewed or, it was based off the novel Ubik.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the novel's sort of well known. I don't know. Philip K. Dick's a bit like a really popular author. It's just been like so much time removed from his day. It's just like people have like forgot like only people like really read it would know, which I should read just a bit. I should really read a Philip K. Dick novel actually. Um I've been reading
Well, he was
Neuromancer
born in, like,
actually. So yeah.
1928, and he
Hmm.
died at 53, so he had some he had a very prestigious career in, like, the
Hmm.
I don't know, 50 years that he wrote for. Um,
Yeah.
I'm saying 50, but really it probably started when he was, like, uh I don't know, in his early 20s. So 30 years roughly, he wrote about 44 novels and 121 short stories. Some of the most uh notorious ones were The Man in the High Castle, which is an Amazon TV show currently.
Hmm.
Ubik, which was turned into Scanners Darkly.
Yeah. Uh,
You'd mentioned
yeah.
earlier
Do
about the
androids dream?
sheep.
Yep. Do androids
You
dream of electric sheep, which was adapted into Blade Runner?
So, Minority Report, The Adjustment Bureau, these are all just movies that are coming out based off of his work. So, fairly decent, very prestigious, and he was married 5 times, which is kind of suspicious. But
Yay! Sounds fun. Anyway, uh, I yeah, I should read a Philip K.
and
Dick novel before soon. Yeah,
yeah, I haven't seen Blade Runner, but it has Harrison Ford in it, so like I might really enjoy it.
it's good. Like maybe I don't know. Maybe we should watch Blade Runner if you haven't seen it. Yeah, I gotta show you a bunch of movies. We need to at some point get together and just watch movies all day at some point. Well, I
Yeah.
don't know. We're talking about doing it, but we need to just set a day or something. Anyway, um,
This
maybe
place,
next.
just recently got a big fancy, TV. My brother went out and he splurged and he bought himself, like, the
Nice.
frame TVs,
Hmm.
which, turn into, like, picture frames
Hmm.
whenever, like, people are in their room and, like, the
Hmm.
TV's not on, so it's kinda cool. I said if, we invite my younger sister out, we should just find every bad picture that was ever taken of her and then just play it on the loop for whenever she stops in, but apparently that's too evil.
But no, we'll have to pick a day and the fall to do that probably when I'm probably working less. We'll see. Anyway, so yeah, Soldier is a I call it a cyberpunk film, which I do like my cyberpunk. Trying to get more written. I'm reading Neuromancer right now to sort of this is my current novel I'm working on reading. It's pretty good. But Soldier is a movie about a like artificially bred super soldier who throughout the course of the movie, which we'll go through, goes through some shenanigans and it's going through all his stuff. I guess in the logic of like uh David Peoples, these super soldiers are like the military grade androids that the guy from the bad guy from Blade Runners is, which I don't know quite matches up because those androids are supposed to die off after that's the entire premise of Blade Runner is like that the androids die off are like programmed to like deactivate after a certain point. And that's a big conflict in the movie, which doesn't appear to be the case with the main character in this movie. Todd is the guy's name. Yeah, no. I was just looking. I just looked at the cast list to remind myself of the guy's name because it's been a couple days since I watched the movie, and I guess the 11-year-old version of Todd is played by Kurt Russell's son Wyatt. So that's kind of neat.
I don't think Wyatt Russell is Kurt Russell's son.
Nope, no, it seems to be. I looked it up. You scroll down, and it says his parents are Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn.
Also, apparently, like in uh the new Winter Soldier,
Hmm. Yeah. Also, apparently, Kurt Russell's
in
dad
Black
is
Mirror.
named Bing, like Neil Bing Russell, was a baseball club owner. Hmm. Interesting. Weird thing. But yeah, this is so I guess that's sort of connection. There's some Easter eggs in this where some of the places where we see on screen that Todd fights are some of the places that Beatty. What was the? I need to look up the character's name. Roy Beatty. Um, like they're
Apparently, there's another film of Jason Scott Lee's, which I don't think this guy's like a top grade actor by any means. uh, I'm trying to find these. He played Bruce Lee in the
hmm,
1993 like Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, which was like honestly his biggest claim to fame. And I guess he was the live action Mowgli in the 1994 Jungle Book. Um,
yeah, Jason Scott Lee is the guy who plays the villain in this movie. For clarity, we haven't introduced him yet.
yeah. But apparently he did a 2003 novel called 2003 movie called Time Cop, and I have no clue what the premise of this movie is. The plot is very long, and I don't want to just sit here and read it, but I'm thinking we should do this at some point. I
So
don't know what
yeah,
the Time Cops of like trilogy is. But there's been 2 of them, one in 1994 and another one in 2003, and it was produced by Sam Raimi.
hmm, neat. But yeah, I guess yeah. So the connection to this being from Blade Runner is the that movie and this movie share a screenwriter, and also like the screenwriter put in some references that Todd was in some of the battles that Roy Batty was in Blade Runner. So yeah, otherwise I don't think the lore matches up because it doesn't. We don't get any real. Maybe I could. Maybe we did get some implication that he's an android, but like I'd have to rewatch the film for the thing that from the Blade Runner movies where all the androids have a little reflection in their eye. I guess that would be a thing, but I'd have to like rewatch the movie. I don't watch. I have a hard time watching movies closely enough to look for like that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, which is fine. I mean, really, all this is fine. I think the movie's actually pretty good. I liked it a quite bit. I have one big. I only really have one complaint about this movie is that when I looked up the movie and like looked up the list, some information on it, I found out that this script had been floating around for like 15 years, as soon as like 1983, I guess. And the thing about this movie is Kurt Russell's performance. It's he's doing his best Arnold Schwarzenegger impression, and I think Arnold Schwarzenegger would have done a really good job with this movie. And this movie was floating around in like the mid '80s when Schwarzenegger was at his prime. They could have gotten Schwarzenegger from if they had picked up on this movie sooner, and like got Schwarzenegger on it. It would I think this would have been like a golden entry into the Schwarzenegger lexicon. Because I don't think there's much about this movie that couldn't have been made in 1985. I think that's a very reasonable assumption about like what can happen. There's a few scenes you would do differently. Mostly, I think there would be less computer generated stuff, which, as far as I think anyone's concerned, is just a benefit. But yeah, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger, if he had been cast in this movie like he should have been in like the mid '80s, this movie would have been perfect. But instead, we're getting Kurt Russell doing a Schwarzenegger impression. Kurt Russell also was filming like a good chunk, a bunch of this movie with like a broken leg, which is why he's sitting down in a lot of the scenes. Or yeah, he experienced some injury, and they had to start filming while he was still recovering. So they filmed all the stuff where he was sitting down first, and then filmed all the action scenes very last, which is honestly probably a better way to do it. But knowing that, it's like, okay, yeah, I can see a few things. Um, Although there's are some
I was
action
actually
scenes. Yeah, go ahead.
more surprised with the bits and pieces of the side cast here. So they had Sean Pertwee. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. He played the henchman, the guy who invites Kurt Russell into this society with the wife and the kid
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
the husband of those guys. He was went on to play in Gotham. And they also had Michael Chiklis who went on to play in Gotham. So they have like two Gotham alumni in this movie, which is quite funny. Sean Pertwee went on to play the Alfred of the TV series Gotham universe, and then Michael Chiklis went on to play Nathan Barnes, and I do believe that Executioner, if I'm remembering his name correctly, it might be Judge something. I can't remember.
He's also the Thing in the original the second Fantastic Four movie, the one that actually got released, which I thought he did a good job in. But yeah, this movie has I think Connie Nielsen plays the female lead. She's yep, in a lot of I think she's yeah, I think she was in Gladiator, so she's been on the show before. I think she's been on the show twice, I think, because she was the wife in Gladiator, and also the she was Hippolyta in like the DC movies. So she appeared in when we did the Justice League movie.
Yeah, and like that was actually done by Ridley Scott,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. Yeah.
which
I forget.
which
Yeah.
who also did Blade Runner and is
Yes.
based on another Philip K. Dick novel. So it's just this giant circle jerk at this point in time of like Hollywood. And I mean, Kurt Russell is also famously known for Gladiator. So
Was he in Gladiator? Did he play in
was
Gladiator?
he not the main guy in
No,
Gladiator?
that's That's what's the guy's name? No, Kurt Russell's like from The Thing and Escape from New York. I can I'm forgetting. I'm blanking on the guy's name.
Oh, Russell. It's Russell Crowe. So I was
Yes. Yeah.
weirdly in the same name, like first.
No,
Okay,
I
not the same
forget.
person.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I also just forget. I forget that Ridley Scott can make a good movie occasionally. Like I am, yeah, I
Is
don't.
there bad Ridley Scott movies? Like,
I think most of them,
I haven't seen his like
like
full filmography list. So I mean,
like besides like Alien and Blade Runner, um, like
Alien, Blade Runner,
like
G.I. Jane,
that
Gladiator,
might be
Hannibal,
GI
Black
Jane
Hawk
might be
Down,
good. Black Hawk Down's
Kingdom
okay,
of
I think.
Heaven. I can't remember if G.I. Jane was good or not.
I haven't seen it. I guess he's
Prometheus.
yeah he's wait, did he make an Odysseus movie?
Prometheus?
Oh, Prometheus. Oh yeah, that I yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, Prometheus and Alien Covenant are both yeah. I also just
The Martian. Oh, he was the guy that was that came out. Oh my god. He came out in like 2021. He came onto a podcast and he was like trying to go people into going to see his movie The Last Duel, which is absolutely hilarious. Um
yeah. Um
and he's making Gladiator 2. What?
yeah, if it's not starring the I have no like I mean see my review of Gladiator which is my most apparently most controversial internet opinion is that I think Gladiator's mid at best. But
Yeah, but like, how do you make like a sequel to the Gladiator films at this point in time? Like, it's 2024 and Gladiator came out 2000, so it's like it's gonna be like almost a reboot at this point.
would you, like I think I did when I did that episode I think I said because we talked me and Marine talked about this a little bit. I think I said like I would only be interested if it starred the African character from that movie, who was another also a gladiator, who did like a whole like
It ha
yeah yeah
he's in it.
yeah
Um,
yeah
I'm probably butchering this name, but it's Digimon. So I want to say Digimon, but I don't think that's how you pronounce it.
no
And then
probably
his
not
last name is like Honso. And
yeah
yeah, so he was in the original 2000 as Juba, and in this one he's recast as Juba in it. So, and I like this guy. I think I've talked about him a couple of times on the podcast. He was Papa Midnight in the 2005 Constantine. He was in Push, which is fairly decent, and I think it was a different guy, but he was. Oh, he was also in 2006 Aragon film. So
but no I don't think I think Ridley Scott's does a lot of bad films. I think he does some good films, but GI Jane I haven't seen, so it might be okay. Black Hawk Down was okay. I don't like. I think his like he did like the Christopher Columbus movie. I think 1492 is what it's called. It's just morally repugnant. No, I'm not a big Ridley Scott fan, really. Yeah. Anyway, moving on to the actual movie we're supposed to be talking about. Because so Soldier, the movie opens with babies in a maternity ward. A bunch of them are being like they have their cribs labeled as 1A. This is a very like we're getting a very dystopian vibes here. Also, this is kind of like Yeah, so these aren't androids, which yeah makes my yeah. So these definitely aren't androids. I had forgotten the beginning of this movie, but yeah. So yeah, these babies get put into the super soldier program. Why do I have written? I'm sorry. This has been a few days since I watched this movie. Why do I have dog kill door in my book notes?
Uh, not a clue. Are you still there?
Yeah, no, I am. I kind of went.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna figure out what the hell I was writing down. Yeah, so we see some various scenes of like this these babies growing up into children. We see them put into like this Orwellian presentation room where they're just being given orders. We see them solving like logic puzzles. The phrases like following orders, soldiers show no mercy are like brought up in one scene as where we see the kids as teenagers. One of the members of the platoon or battalion company. I don't know what the term is. One of them falls behind the rest of the running crew while they're doing run, and a Humvee pulls next to him, and one of the guys overseeing the project shoots the kid that's lagging behind. Then after they grow up, we see them like doing some actual missions. We get a sense of who our main character is. Our main character, Todd OPO3465, and we see him doing various war crimes. We see one of the guys he's fighting takes a hostage, and he guns down the hostage to get to the insurgent he's fighting. We see him fight a bunch of different campaigns. And as we get to the next scene, we cut to them several years later. Todd's a bit of on the older end of being a soldier, which would make him. I'm not. Yeah, yeah. So he's getting a little older. And we get presented with another company has shown up of the latest batch of super soldiers, who are going to be who are being compared. The the two commanders of these units, Captain Church, the commander of Todd's unit, and what's the other guy's name? Colonel Meekum played. Yeah, I'll bring up their cast list. Captain Church played by Gary Busey, and then Colonel Meekum played by Jason Isaacs, who's commanding the new unit. They're having some arguments about like what's happening here because essentially Meekum wants to replace Todd's unit because the new super soldiers are superior and are better at work doing all the super soldiery things. But Captain Church argues the the new unit is too inexperienced, and Todd's unit is still like quite capable of like doing things and serve a valuable purpose. And there's no and like it should at least be somewhat involved in military operations going forwards. So in order to have a little bit of a competition, Captain Church sets Todd up, who is now a sergeant, sends Todd out on a run, and 20 minutes later, he sends the most promising member of Meekum's troop, Kane 607, played by Jason Scott, the aforementioned Jason Scott Lee. I keep trying to get his name mixed up with Jason Lee Scott, who is the Red Ranger from the original Power Rangers. This is a problem. I need to overcome it. It's very difficult. So yeah, Kane pers- uh, starts running after Todd 20 minutes later and manages to not only catch up with Todd, but manages to arrive a solid 30 seconds before Todd gets back to the starting point. They continue this with another test where Todd and Kane are going to go climb up some chains, and they're going to have a fight up there. And Church is even allowed to send two more guys up so that Todd and can 3-on-1 Kane, which eventually ends up with Kane knocking down the two lesser soldiers, and also knocking down knocking down Todd after Todd scratches out Kane's right eye. And all three of these men fall. All three of Church's men fall to the ground. Um, Todd's fall is slightly broken by one of the other soldiers, but appears dead on the scene, or is at least appeared to be brutally injured. And Meekum refuses them medical attention and instead has them just thrown in the trash. But Church also criticizes this test because they've actually managed to wound one of the new best soldiers. Church is honest. Captain Gary Busey's character is actually a pretty interesting character. You kind of like he's very much this type of guy in this totalitarian state who does happen to know what he's doing, but is going to be slowly overcome by the stupidity of a totalitarian state. Church is very much got the sharper military mind here, but is going to be overcome by institutional problems, which, yeah, I kind of like that as a sign of sickness in this regime. So Meekum will get his way, and not only are the new soldiers going to be yeah, they're getting replaced, but they're not even being put as reserves. Church's unit is now a support company who will not be issued weapons. So yeah, they're disregarding the old super soldiers to such a degree that now the old super soldiers are just laborers. It's actually almost strange that they even let them stay in the military. So Todd eventually wakes up from his near-death experience on the trash ship after he is dumped on some trash planet by some trash ship and manages to crawl away. He crawls through this trash heap and eventually finds a guide rope, which eventually the use of which is eventually exposed by a massive sandstorm, which blows thing around. But Todd, with his superior physique, manages to hold himself steady and not get blown away by the wind. He eventually crawls to a village where he is recovered by the locals, who discuss what to do with him. They notice that he's a soldier, and treat him as a threat, but thankful. But the problem is they decide that they can't just leave him to die, so they decide to give him medical attention, which allows him to slowly recover. Eventually, he manages to fully recover, but he's not fully recovered, but he's still wounded for a little bit. But he manages to get back up from a coma is not the word, but heavy bed rest. And when he eventually gets fully conscious, you see him eating some food that they provided him, and he just eats like a absolute machine, just stuffing it all in his mouth. They Now that he's awake, some of the other villagers start asking him questions about where he came from. One villager suggests he's a deserter. Suggests that he's a deserter, something he gets very hostile about. But it does goad him into explaining that he's been replaced, and he won't fully elaborate on that. The couple who's been helping him recover, played by the character we mentioned earlier, Mace, Sean Petrie's Mace, and Sandra Nielsen, who plays Connie Nielsen, who plays Sandra. They've taken him in along with their child, who are taking care of him. Sandra eventually explains what the deal with this colony is. Their ship they were colonists from Earth whose ship crashed on this desert planet, and they've tried contacting other people but haven't managed it. Um, Apparently, the trash ships that are dropping trash off on this planet are like autonomous, is what they figure at least, because they're not responding to like any like signal flares or explosions they make. So they're just sort of stuck here, and they managed to scavenge different stuff they need to survive here. They've managed to find some plants somehow, which is interesting. Although that may have been from their initial ship, who knows? Also, they have snakes. Yeah, the cold vastness of snakes haven't space hasn't saved these people from the blight of venomous snakes. Not the world's most venomous snakes, granted, but still, enough deadly enough to kill most children, and wound like seriously injure most adults.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that apparently this guy would be completely immune to the snake bite. Um, a conversation later on was stating that like the female, I'm drawing blanks on her name.
Sandra,
Uh, Sandra mentioned that it would probably kill her, but I think the implication here is that he's too big that it wouldn't have the same effect
yeah, he is a super
on
soldier.
him as it did her.
Yeah, he might just be like able to
Fair
resist
enough.
that sort of thing better. Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, yeah. As like the movie gets over, it's like you get a better idea of how much stronger Todd is than the rest of the people here, who are presumably normal humans. They are like we see him later in the movie just like putting dents into steel with his bare hands, and it doesn't really phase him. Like he eventually just takes a giant muffler and uses it as a punching bag. Uh, so yeah, he's quite tough. So yeah, he's also Todd's just swooning over Sandra, the married woman who's been taking care of him. It's actually wild how like granted Sandra's probably the only like actually these are probably the only people he's ever seen that weren't like in the military that he wasn't supposed to immediately kill. Like he's very much just a murderer, and we'll get a like idea of what like the government's like in this world a bit later. But yeah, he is like this is probably the only woman he's talked to that he hasn't been allowed to like murder. He hasn't been told to like murder, so he's just swooning over her the entire movie, and it's just a wild plot point. It's just super weird. I kind of like how they portray Todd in this movie. I think a lot of people write off Todd's character because he is like admittedly a war criminal, but like I think he very much fits into like the Vegeta category where like someone who's admittedly really horrible has like been exposed to some influence that would make him a better person. I think his character is honestly better. They do that better in this movie than he does with Vegeta. So um yeah, I think yeah, his character is very much now that he's been abandoned, he slowly does like gain a clear like respect for these people. Whether or not he strictly has a feeling remorse for what he's done, I think is an open question. But I think by the end of the movie, he does like he has been given back his sense of community, which I do not believe he had for the in his previous life. Some I think like some people need to be redeemed, other people need like to be like freed from their shackles, and I think Todd is sort of like that in a way. Um, like he's very much some sort of, yeah, he is a slave, maybe an evil, easily brainwashed one immediately, but he does very much. He is a very much a victim of the system, along with uh, as much as anybody.
I think there's a little bit to say. I guess that they've kind of both are in the same position. This new regime of soldiers and this older regime of soldiers. The older machine of soldiers is a little bit more harrowing because they were, I'm assuming, stolen from birth and raised to be soldiers.
Yeah,
And I mean, I guess that there's not much difference in the long run about the other one, compared to the other ones, because the other ones were along the same lines. They were bred in specifically as soldiers, which is kind of muting the point that I was about to try and make about nature over nurture, because they're both in the same form of nurture program, and their nature is uh, not too heavily different at that point. But except for, I guess that there's an argument to be made about the kids who didn't make it through the initial super soldier training that were shot on sight, and I think one of them was mauled by a dog at some point in time.
that's what I had my notes on. That's what it was. I forgot about the
Is
scene where the
it?
kid. Yeah, that must be it. Yeah, I think a dog kills a kid in this movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it must be.
I thought you said dog murders door in the
Yeah, I don't
beginning,
know
and
what the
I'm
third.
like, what are you talking about? Like,
I don't fully know. It's been long enough that like we hadn't got like I think we had to reschedule this recording, so I think it's just been long enough that I had forgotten that scene at the beginning of the movie, and my notes aren't like very clearly written. So yeah, but that's probably what it was. Yeah, I think it's also kind of interesting to know that like this. I think this has like a really good portrayal of the idea of like breeding super soldiers because like because these I almost my guess is more that like these children these children were all made through like surrogates or something, or if not like a full like artificial womb somewhere or whatever, I don't know, but it you I think like if I'm understanding the implication correctly, all these children are like all the children at the beginning in the maternity ward were meant to be like super soldiers, and they only take like half of them, like half of this group of like 50 babies or whatever, then train up like 25 of them, and then you lose like six of them in like training. And I just it kind of like exposes this kind of thing, I think that's I don't think we explore about super soldiers, like breeding super soldiers enough, is that like it's not going to be a perfect process. Some of those kids, some of these children you breed for this are not going to want to do what you ask them, no matter how much brainwashing you do. So, like, I think this movie does a really good job of like like showing that this would be like realistically a really brutal process. Yeah, it's really yeah. I thought it was just really
I guess
super
it
interesting.
really starts to like blur the lines between like, I kind of understand where like Kurt Russell's character, or Russell, yeah, Kurt Russell's character is like so socially inept at the end of the movie, or even at the beginning of the movie, where he's just like oogling this girl's breasts while they're in the same room, and like she clearly can see him just like staring at her breasts, and I'm like, the fuck, like some form of like social etiquette that was like completely like not, I guess, learned, because these guys are like literal soldiers.
Yeah, I think it's like I mean it gets you into like a weird enough place in like the real world where like a guy will like join the military at like 18, and when at a point where you're already still like very much socially awkward, and then like puts you into like this really strict, disciplined environment, which I think a lot of soldiers will freely admit that will like if only like with a chuckle, it's just like yeah, it kind of like yeah, being in the military kind of messes you up, and some of them will just be like, yeah, like affectionately sometimes, but it does do a tremendous it does do a number on your personality. Whether you want to say that's positive or not is one thing. I think it's another thing to say to say like take like 20 children, raise them from birth, and make them be in like the most strict version of the military possible. I think that's does something very like obvious and detrimental to somebody's mind. Even someone who seems to take to it, like Todd does. Todd is, I think, sort of like, if not enthusiastic, like content with his life in the military. And then I think he's very much getting turned around by the fact that they just sort of like, he got exposed by how much like these people didn't care about him. Like I think before that, at least it's like, oh, you're the first and last line of defense for your great nation, and then they just toss him away, um, which I think is justifiably changes his mind to be a more heroic character. So yeah, they the villagers agree to let him stay for a bit. He does some help with them. He helps them do some salvaging. He saves a guy who had been very critical of him from like getting like blown into a what's the word I'm looking for? Um combine like rotor, which yeah, and he saves his life pretty well single-handedly. And even like even though like all these people in the village are like a little bit nervous by Todd, and admittedly that's somewhat because of his personality. He's not the most personable in the world. They do slowly come to like sort of accept him as like yeah, this guy's willing to stick around, and he'll go to bat for us if we need him to. I think that's one thing that like Todd's military training would help him understand is like you do what you can to help your unit, and Todd's very much adopted these people as his unit throughout the next few scenes. So we cut back to our military operation. Colonel Meacham, Meacham. What was I? What did I say his name was? Meekum. Yep, Colonel Meekum is going over with some of the troops and also Captain's Church that they're going to be doing the biannual security sweep of the colonies as a way to like train the new batch of super soldiers. Church complains about like wanting to keep the old troops in like the fray and have them like participate as like, or I think like what he's trying to imply is like seeding the younger troops with some older blood so they can sort of learn. It's a pretty established technique for training in any workforce, really. Meekum is very much against this. Meekum also states that yeah, we're just gonna shoot anyone who we find that's not like registered, which would include anyone that caught is like a crash, got caught in a spacecraft, or was like a refugee, or just is anyone that's just like not a member of the voting bloc, if this place even have votes. Um, Church protests, but doesn't do anything because ultimately he's not really a hero here. He's just slightly more competent than the guy above him. So yeah, we get that. We get some more conversations between them. This is about in the movie where Todd saves that guy who was critical of him. Sandra's asking him some questions about his feelings, and he says he only really feels fear and also discipline. He includes after a moment, which kind of says something about his personality. During their Christmas celebration, or salt. I think yeah, I think it's yeah. They just say it's Christmas in this for that. They he has a bit of a PTSD episode and wanders off. And when the guy he saved tries to give him like a Christmas present late because he was trying to give it to him last night before he disappeared. Todd gets caught in a PTSD episode and starts strangling the guy, which gives the villagers a bit of a pause and are just like, "Hey, man, this guy's getting stronger by the day as he recovers more. Should we maybe consider kicking him out?" They're talking about it, but it doesn't really get anywhere just yet. Later that night, Nathan, the child of Mace and Sandra, is playing around and is being getting approached by a snake. Todd is in with the room with Nathan and tries to imitate to Nathan that you can take a big boot, which he has lying around, and just smash the snake with it, which Nathan isn't fully understanding. Which results in Todd needing to catch the snake mid jump in order to prevent it from biting Nathan. He sort of just like stares at it for a while before eventually killing it. But the parents show up about while he has it in his hand, so it just sort of looks like he's like just playing around with the snake with his kid. So after that, Mace sort of turns on him and convinces the rest, and this is a final straw, and they exile Todd from the village, um, just to just because he's too dangerous and like he's not able to function in regular society, which is mean. But they don't really feel like they have an option, and it's a darn sight better treatment than what the military gave him. And they're also like providing him with some food and supplies so that he can get set up on his own. So a couple nights later, a snake is sneaking up on Sandra and Mace in their bedroom, and Nathan manages to kill it with a boot. And Mace realizes what was happening that night and goes to convince the people that he was wrong. And they convince him he was wrong, and they go to and Mace goes in the middle of the night to or goes out on his own to try to tell Todd that he can come back. Eventually, he finds Todd hunkered down in a hollowed out jet engine or something. I forget. I think that was what it was, and apologizes, and he invites him back to the community. And just as this is happening, two big military gunship is seen flying overhead, uh, which is the first non-trash barge they've seen on this planet. Mace tries waving to it, but Todd gets him to stop as they're but they are noticed, and the gunship starts firing at them. They try running away, but eventually they shoot a missile at the gunships land. They deploy a couple tanks, and one of them shoots, and they start shooting at them. It's uh, they get Mason Todd get caught in an explosion, which takes away Todd's leg. Todd's able to pull him away into a safe area where they're able to avoid being seen, and the military loses track of them. Mace loses too much blood from this, and ends up dying, which is very convenient way of like the writer just making sure that the main character can get the girl at the end of the movie. This gives me a little bit of pause. I don't like how dirty they do this guy. Um, like it kind of does a little bit feel like they're just killing him off to like make sure that Todd can get with the girl. Um,
Yeah, no. And
yeah, it's
this whole like outing of Todd in the movie just seems really stupid. I don't know how best to explain that, like, it just seems kind of forced, like, they're, like, got halfway through the story and they're like, "Whoa, we need, like, to make some, like, obvious," and they didn't even, like, make it any, like, big thing. They could have had him, like, have a PTSD flashback where he, like, actually ends up killing somebody or something really bad, but, like, this whole snake thing just seems really forced, so I don't know how best to.
It's I don't mind it. Um, really, I'm just the romance angle really gets me with this. Um, like I'll grant it that it's very much like we don't know how far this attraction goes. There's not enough like physical time left in the plot of this movie to like facilitate a romance between Todd and Sandra. Um, like I think there's only like maybe a day of in movie time left in the course of the movie, but and Todd and Sandra never really hook up in the movie, but I think it's kind of it is just sort of weird. I think that maybe they needed to do I think they should have probably done something where they end up in a more platonic relationship. Although I'll say that like Mace at no point in the movie ever really gives Todd any shit for ogling his wife. Which maybe just makes this honestly kind of makes this worse, really. Um,
I was gonna say, like, the kid angle throughout it is kind of bland. The
yeah,
kid is mentioned that he's mute and can't speak anymore, so he
mhm,
has no lines, and we don't really see, like,
yeah,
besides the fact that this guy, like, stops a snake in front of him and is trying to teach him, like, "Okay, kill snakes," with a shoe, a
yeah.
boot, I guess.
I think it is
Um,
kind of nice. I do kind of like how they Nathan and Nathan the kid and uh, Todd kind of have this
it
nice little
is
nonverbal interaction.
if they would have done it a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, which I think would have been helped by
Um,
having Arnold Schwarzenegger movie because we know he does good with kids from that from his classic movie Kindergarten Cop. And
sure.
I haven't seen
I
that
don't
movie,
think
but
I've
I'm
ever
sure it's
seen
very good.
Kindergarten Cop. Yeah,
No,
okay, it's either of you.
no, I was more or
Uh,
less making a joke. I don't know how good that movie actually is. I've seen like the first 10 minutes, and I turned it off immediately after you get to the scene where like they're in the school, and uh, Arnold's just like saying, "Oh, why don't you introduce me to you, my students?" And one of the kids just gets up and says, "A boy has a penis and a girl has a vagina," and I just turn off the movie right there because I'm like, I don't want to watch the rest of this now. Anyway, but yeah, just Nathan doesn't speak because he was bitten by a snake as a child, and just he's just very weak. Which yeah, yeah, I don't care for this. Anyway, moving on. Todd agrees to eventually to essentially to go uh save the village. The village goes up to go meet with the soldiers because what the fuck else are you gonna do? They're the villagers have like some weapons, and like World War II era weaponry, whereas this military has like sci-fi cyberpunk weapons. So like, yeah, they try to negotiate to send some guys up to talk, and the military just blows them away. Todd manages to the soldiers send in only 3 guys to clear out the entire village. Todd arrives and manages to kill off the soldiers who are bulletproof but do can die to like RPGs and whatnot. And also their goggles are not stab resistant apparently. Although I don't know how stab resistant a stab resistant goggle really is. Um, Todd manages to fight off the three guys and just growls into the radio back to the other guys. And at this point, he kind of realizes that like, this is his old team, or like these were the new guys that replaced him. So this is sort of like a matter of personal pride too, where he's like doing a whole revenge thing on them. Um, Honestly, I can get why some people think this is a weak motivation, but I think the movie does sort of do well regardless. But yeah, I get why some people might say like, "Oh, this is just Todd having revenge, getting revenge for getting replaced." Which I don't know, maybe yeah, I think that's part of it, but I don't think that's the whole reason. I think he has changed as a person. Like he's certainly not like Captain Church, who's just going along with this whole thing. Like Sarge, like say what you will about Todd, at least he stands up for these innocent people after like they show him some kindness. Church does nothing for them. Like Church is like perfectly fine. Like, I guess we'll murder the civilians. It's a burden to him, not like a moral problem. He's just sort of annoyed by it, which is why Church isn't a heroic character. So the command decides they're going to pull back and just use artillery on the village. So yeah, they managed to do artillery and kill a good chunk of the village. So yeah, there's 17 more of these soldiers that Todd needs to fight. A guy fight these guys that him and his other three of his compatriots weren't able to kill in a 3-on-1 fight. Although that was more of a like brute force competition where this is a challenge of strategy, which is what Church was bringing up the whole time, is that these young troops don't have strategic brains like the old guys do. It's also kind of interesting note to like Todd doesn't talk a lot through this movie, but when he does, he refers to everyone as sir. Like even like Sandra, he'll just when he talks to Sandra, he'll just be like, "Yes, sir. They're going. You need to hide the children, sir." He doesn't even know how to. I don't think he even knows the word "ma'am." Perfectly honest.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's like a probably a pretty reasonable thing. So he starts taking on the rest of the. Todd starts taking on the rest of the military. He kills some with a big machine gun he gets from one of the dead soldiers. Um, he throws a snake at one that kills another one. He stabs another one. He steals a minigun, which he sets up in a trash heap and uses it to fire on people. The other new troops just blindly like Normandy Beach the thing and managed to find the minigun troop, which apparently Todd just left on a like mounted and held back the trigger so it would keep firing. And he's labeled it like wired it with grenades so it explodes when the guys manage to get to the machine gun nest he's made up. He manages to eventually also commandeer a second tank. He kills the guys inside and is manages to pretend to be one of the other soldiers over the comm. Um, and eventually, he just drives the tank right into the other tank. Manages to destabilize the other tank, which we've seen throughout the movie. Kane is driving because he only has one eye, and they don't want him in the field. Todd uses the tank to knock over the other tank. They get into some fights. We also see that there's no bulletproof glass on these military vehicles, which is another weird thing. Although sci-fi weapons might have held up against the dumb like World War II guns that the villagers had. Todd and Kane have their face-to-face fight, which is I think is pretty good. It does some good back and forth. Todd does like this is their. I think this is a pretty good rematch. Eventually, Todd manages to kill Kane with a by dropping a helicopter, misdirecting and dropping a helicopter blade on him. And yeah, mention and this Todd decides that the best course of action, now he's killed the remaining soldiers, manages to circle around for to take the military starship. Nuke Neecham Meekum decides that his plan is to just have the older soldiers set up a like planet buster bomb, I think is what they call it, something like that effect. And yeah, that he decides to have them set up because they didn't bring enough guns to even equip the older soldiers in the case of an emergency. So yeah, he's just being really incompetent, which is funny because he's a fascist. Good for him to die. Um, Eventually, him and Meekum and Church get into an argument. Church eventually is just like, you know what? I'm gonna go kick your ass because he's had enough of this asshole. And Meekum just shoots Church and forces the issue of putting the putting the like the nuke on this planet. The old soldiers start the timer, but are met with Todd, and Todd is able to communicate with a guy who seemed to be his second in command. I think it's Riley is the character. Anyway, the one of the other members of Todd's crew recognizes him, and they have like a moment of understanding, and they break onto the and Todd and the remaining villagers and the old soldiers break onto the ship and manage to do a proper mutiny and take over the ship. They leave Meekum and two of the other people on the surface, shanghaiing them on this trash planet. However, they've also left the bomb running. So as Todd and the villagers and the soldiers get away, the bomb is still going off. So yeah, the entire old village is basically destroyed as the Todd and his friends manage to leave in peace. And Nathan, we get our final shot with Nathan wanting up from Todd and Todd holding him while looking out the viewport with Sandra. And that's the end of the movie as they get their freedom. It's kind of, I don't know. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, it wasn't great. I
Yeah,
think a
not
lot of it was
legendary.
undercut by the campiness of the whole entire like
Mm,
action film.
yeah,
So
needs more Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I don't know what it needs. I think
Yeah,
it just didn't need to exist.
yeah. I don't know. I think
And the
there's some
fact that
points that are good.
it's
Go ahead.
I think the fact that like they tried to tie in the whole Blade Runner like thing to it just seems kind of like I don't know. I don't want to say cliche because it's not necessarily cliche. It's more like unnecessary.
Yeah, it's an attention grab. I'll be honest. That seems like a big attention grab from the writer. I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's a fine movie. I didn't. I enjoyed watching it.
I mean, you didn't even really need to like. At first, my first thought of it was like, oh, it's a Kurt Russell movie. It's gonna like have a very thin basis analogy to Australia, but apparently that wasn't the case.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, some things could be said that there's a connection to Australia where they like stuck all of their like when I read the initial description of the movie, I thought what they were doing is they were taking all their like unwanted old military people and just like putting them off on like a retirement planet, and that wasn't necessarily the case. So
Yeah, I think it's okay. It had a $60 million budget and it lost $14.6 million, and it only made $14.6 million, which is atrocious. That's like a one of the worst losses we've seen on this show. So this movie only pulled in like $7 million when you really get it down to it, which yeah, that's rough. Yeah, I think you probably could have made this movie for less money. Also, I think they probably spent too much money on it. I think it could have made it for half and made it look just as good. I don't know where all the money's going.
green screen and CGI shots.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's
And
probably it.
this is like 1990s like green screen, so it's pretty obvious green screen technology at this point.
Yeah.
So
No, yeah, like I said, if make this movie in like 1985, you're not going to spend half your budget on bad CGI, and also you can cast Arnold Schwarzenegger. But yeah, anyway, yeah, I think this movie's an '80s movie that's in the late '90s for some reason. So yeah, just not much to it. What do you give the movie, Cody?
I would probably say like 3 out of 10. One for the plot. I mean,
Mm,
it's easier to like look at how I'm subtracting points than it is to look how I'm giving it points. The CGI was bad. The acting was kind of low key really bad. Uh, the plot wasn't great. Like it just has a lot stacked up against it, and the only real thing that it kind of has going for it is the fact that it's a tie-in, but also like it's such an unnecessary tie-in that it really doesn't exactly add a whole lot to the movie still. So
Kurt Russell only speaks 104 words in this movie, but he is in 85% of the scenes. So that's kind of an interesting note. Yeah, it's very much not much of a speaking role.
Mhm.
I don't think. Yeah, I just don't think is the best use of Kurt Russell. Like I'm sort of joking with the Arnold Schwarzenegger stuff, but I'm kind of not joking with the Arnold Schwarzenegger stuff. Like an actor like that would have been much better for this movie. Yeah, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
you could really stick anybody in this role at this point in time, and
Yeah,
it'd be completely
I
uh
think there's actors who do a
justified. It
really
could
good.
have just
Yeah.
been some
Mhm. Go ahead.
no name person, and I think they would need some form of depth, but also like the whole PTSD portrayal thing could have been done better. His social skills could have been completely inept, but it could have been done a little bit better. It's like they tried to touch on something and they just kind of fell short of what they were going for, and it could have been done well if they really attempted it, and it just never was.
I
So,
think you are sort of on the mark. Like with this feels very much like a no name performance. Like I feel like a lot of actors could have done
mhm.
just as well as Kurt Russell is doing here. Maybe it's just because Kurt Russell has a broken ankle in all these scenes. Maybe that's just distracting from his performance. But like, I think there are like my point is really that there are actors that would do really good here, but Kurt Russell's just not doing that. It's a very weak
Mhm.
Kurt Russell performance, um, and I don't think like I don't think he's just suited for the role. I'm giving it like like a strong 6. Like I think if it had a good actor, I think it'd be a 7. Yeah, it's not like legendary, but I think I like it. I like it a fair bit. I'm sort of surprised it lost as much money as it did. Anyway, do we have an idea what we want to do next that we can sort of advertise?
I've come across a couple of films that consider doing. I don't know if we did the Death Race 2000.
No, we haven't.
That's a 1976
Yeah,
David Carradine film
we could
that,
do that.
I guess, greenlit the original Death Race, which came out in 2000. In the 2000s, I don't know
Yeah,
when it, actually came out.
yeah, yeah. We could do that.
Soon here.
Yeah, yeah. When we get to it, we're gonna try really hard to get some side project stuff out. Hopefully, we'll do some recording on that this week. We don't know. Yeah, really sorry about the delays. Again, it's just a switch of scenarios, and a lot of it just didn't work out as well. But yeah, I guess see you guys next time. Bye.